What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the Mets PostGame Show right around the channel and on X. And that is a sixth straight loss from our New York Mets and another series loss for our New York Mets as the Mets lose another game in the division as the Phillies just pulled it out against the Texas Rangers. And now they are 4.5 games out of the division. And the Reds did win, and now they're only 2.5 games leading in that third wild card spot as the New York Mets have found other ways to lose once again with bad defense, bad pitching, and bad offense. There's nothing you can pick and say, oh, well, that was okay, because it was all bad. Just want to go over a few things and hit that like button, guys. Subscribe to the channel. We have over 100 in the chat already. And I think everybody's waiting for the rant. Everybody's waiting for me to go absolutely berserk. And that will happen in a few minutes. I promise you that. Right? So, oh boy. All right. So, let's get started as the Mets did lose 7-4. And they just, again, it's just bad performance all around. It hasn't changed for a while. And before we even think about what needs to be focused on, I want to focus on this first because this is important. I talked to you in the pregame about the leads that starters have constantly give up, regardless if they're a 1-run lead, 2-run lead, regardless. If it's a small lead, big lead, doesn't matter. Here we are. Now, obviously, Reed Garrett started the game. But Montez was in the game from inning 2 to inning 4. He pitched 3 innings. Right? The home run by Alonso. Congratulations to Alonso tying Dower Strawberry. I can care less about that, but I know people care about it, so there you go. Right? They had a 1-0 lead. Cool. Right? Same inning. Montez gave up 2 runs. Now we're losing. So hit the home run. I'm sorry. We got to run in. Marte is the home run. Tie ball game. All right. So it's a tie ball game while Montez is in. Then in the 4th, he puts up a 0. Great. The 4th inning, the Mets take the lead. 4-3. Great. We got a lead. I'm 4-2. Excuse me. 4-2. What happens? Give up another run, right? We're leading again. So it's 4-3 in the 5th inning. And then, because your starters can't go deep into games, they used an opener to get Montez deeper into the game. He can't get out of the game. He's out, obviously, by the 4th inning. So you got to use guys in the 5th inning on, right? We had to use. This is the problem. This is the problem. We relinquished multiple leads in the game prior to the 5th inning. From the 5th inning, from the 1st inning to the 5th inning, we lost 1, 2, 3 leads. Right? Two leads, excuse me. 2 leads. Right? 2 leads. 70 pitches in 3 innings. Thank you, Dolo. Right? So we used an opener to try to extend Montez because he's usually good for the first 3 to 4 innings, right? That has usually been the case, and he usually falls apart in either inning 4 or inning 5. So you understand what the Mets are trying to do here, right? Understand, right? He had a 30 pitch inning in that 2nd inning, which killed his entire outing. And even with the opener, which eventually came back to haunt us, because where did Ryan Stanek pitch? Oh, the 7th inning. Who was supposed to be pitching in that spot? Reed Garrett. So here we go. This is the trickle-down effect that I talk about when it comes to the pitching, guys. This is why I talk about, because you can't trust Montez, because you can't trust anybody other than Peterson in this rotation, the fact that you had to use Reed Garrett as an opener, because it's usually been Reed Garrett or Brazaben being openers, right? That has been the case, unless it's like Hageman or Waddell or something like that, right? You could have used Hageman. I don't know why they didn't. They could have done it that way, but they decided to use Reed Garrett. They probably wanted an established bullpen arm that has done an opener. Great, do it. Braziban's not here, so Reed Garrett, fine, right? You can't predict what's going to happen in later innings. But in that spot where Reed Garrett would have pitched, it was Ryan Stanek. It was Ryan Stanek, right? Somebody could have said, well, you could have put Helsley in. Well, why wouldn't Helsley give up that 2-run homer anyway? So it didn't matter, right? It didn't matter. And this is why when you look at the pitching, and the issue is the pitching is not good enough. So you got to be creative if you're the Mets because your pitching, your rotation sucks. So you got to use opener because Montas can't do anything. And we go back to Kodai Senga yesterday. Why? Because with his 6-day pitch and his 5 days off and now pitching on his 6th day, he couldn't get out of the 5th inning. So we had to use 5 bullpen arms. And then today, because Senga didn't do what he was supposed to do yesterday and his job, and we'll get to the offense, don't worry. But here's relies the problem why it trickles down to the next day, right? Today we used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys. 6 guys. I'm including Reed Garrett in there because he was the opener. So 6 guys in our bullpen today with Montas pitching innings starting in inning 2. So that's a problem within itself. Because yesterday I believe we used 5 pitchers yesterday. If I'm not mistaken, I'm going to check that really quick because that's always fun to talk about. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we used 4 guys. So we used Stanek, Soto, Rogers. Who did we use today? Soto, Rogers, and Stanek. And throwing Reed Garrett in there and throwing Helsley. You see the problem? This is why I talk about when your starting pitching is mediocre. And by the way, this is what happens when you cheap out on a rotation, okay? You get shit like this, and then you have to be creative where you have to extend into your bullpen with openers and other nonsense that shouldn't be the case. You're a fucking New York team. Act like a New York team. You have no ace. You don't even have a top 2 starter. Let's not joke ourselves here. You want to talk about David Peterson? Be it great. Fine, let's do that. So we're in a situation where the pitching doesn't do anything it's supposed to do in the rotation. So now we have to use the bullpen that's supposed to be a strength more as an opener or just more in general. They got to pitch more. So you use 4, 5, 6 guys a game in the bullpen, and you have to have each individual guys in the bullpen have to be near perfect. We blew 3 leads in this game. 3 leads in this game. From the starter doing it to the bullpen doing it. All right, we can talk about Ryan Stanek all you want. But because Montas is terrible, you had to use an opener. The Mets were trying to be creative here. They were trying to extend Montas into the 5th inning at least. Or at least until the 6th inning. At least. He couldn't even do it. He couldn't even get past the 4th. He got past the 4th and couldn't go into the 5th. Like, that is a problem. Like, that's what I continue to talk about. Is the fact that why on earth, look, the offense hasn't been good. We know that. But again, they gave the pitching multiple leads in this game. When is this pitching going to hold leads? Please tell me that. If the offense is so bad and everybody wants to say, oh, well, the pitching is this, the pitching is that. They were like, oh, well, the pitching hasn't been that bad. They're top 4 in baseball, whatever it is with ERA nonsense. But they don't hold leads, right? Today was a day where the bullpen finally got a lead. And what happened? They lost the lead. They blew the lead, the bullpen. They blew the lead. And then when it was in a tie game, they blew the tie game. And then the offense has to try to figure it out. We know that's almost impossible. But multiple times we got leads in this game. And when the bullpen finally, remember I talked about in the pregame, the bullpen has been good since the trade deadline. It would be nice to give them a lead. Well, you got a lead, and they blew it. Why? Because bullpens are volatile. Bullpens are very, very volatile. Any given day, somebody can blow up. When you use 4 or 5 guys in a bullpen on a regular basis, like the Mets have done all year, it's very hard to have these guys continue to be near perfect, if not perfect. Like, this is the problem. Right? We scored 4 runs today, right? We had to score 8 today to win. I mean, come on. Seriously. We had 3 leads today, and we blew every one of them. So, when I complain about the rotation, please listen and understand why it affects other parts of the decision-making for Mendoza. Why they have to do stupid, nonsensical things because your rotation isn't very good. And right, I put it all on David Stearns, right? And I think it was, who was it? Was it Brad or committee? I think it was committee, where he says, why play Vientos if you're not going to play him the entire game? You took Vientos out because it's not like he's really hitting anyway, to put Mauricio in for defensive purposes. And the guy tries to get a short hop instead of backing up and taking the longer hop, where if you look at the play in that situation, the ball was basically right by Mauricio before the batter even got halfway out of the box. Like, he barely got out of the box, and the ball was to Mauricio already. So he could have took the longer hop instead of siding the ball, which, again, this is the problem when you take guys out of position. People will be like, well, Mauricio's been playing third base for a while. Yeah, but he's a natural shortstop. In a natural shortstop situation, you got a little bit more time on ground balls to make a decision, to get in front of it, to allay it, to get the ball to the side. When you're at third base, reaction time is shorter. This is a situation right on here, guys, that Mauricio is out of position. And what does he do? He sides the ball. There was no reason to do that. He had enough time. The ball wasn't hit that hard. It was a 2-chopper to him. It was a 2-bouncer to him. You get in front of the ball. So if the ball does take a bad hop, boom, hits the chest. How do I know that, Robert? Oh, I played third base my entire life. I'm sorry. You don't have to be a good defensive player to understand that. But this is the problem about low IQ baseball players. Mauricio is a low IQ player. Same thing like Vientos, same thing like Brett Beatty. Their baseball IQ is minimal. Minimal. And we continue to act like this isn't a problem. And once again, when I talk about too many options for Mendoza, it makes him make decisions that he doesn't necessarily have to make. Why will you take out Vientos at third base? Why? It was, what was it, the 7th inning when this happened? Right? It was the 7th inning, right? When all this crazy shit went down? That's it. Yeah, it was the 7th inning, right? There was a possibility that Vientos would have got another at-bat, right? It did, because Mauricio struck out. He looked terrible at the plate, right? I understand the defensive replacement stuff. I understand that. But you don't trust a guy, and this is the problem when I talk about Met fans, why teams do not give a shit about the prior year. Because Vientos would have never came out of that game last year in a situation like that, right? We had Iglesias, who can play anywhere in the infield, defensive purposes, right? Absolutely. But when you give when the player hasn't been good at that position, by either offensively and defensively, you go into this situation where Mendoza has too many options. So what is he going to do? He's going to feel like he has to make that decision. Because what's going to happen? Vientos is in there and he makes the error, and everybody really should have put Mauricio in, right? So it's a second guess no matter which way he goes. There's Met fans that were on board with putting Mauricio for defensive replacement. And what did he do? He played the ball to his side. You don't do that. Especially, like, if the ball was hit really hard, you don't even have time to have that decision. He took a 2-hopper and played it to the side for no reason. You know why? Because he's not a natural third baseman. I don't care how good you might think you are defensively. When you move guys out of position, Old habits die hard. Old habits die hard. Exactly, Strike. You take the long hop, right? I don't care what position you play. Like, if you're a shortstop and the ball is hit somewhat hard, you can charge it, but you can always take the long hop. And again, I looked at the replay just to make sure I'm correct on this situation, because I could see him playing it on the side if it was hit a little bit softer. It wasn't hit, slow. It was a pretty good hopper, but it was a 2-hopper. You had time to take the longer hop. He got a great arm. That should come into play in your mind. But this is the baseball low IQ that too many of our prospects have that nobody wants to talk about. Or everybody talks about a 5'2" player. You're not. When your baseball IQ is low, which Mauricio clearly is, you fall into these situations. So what happened? Mauricio, who is not a third baseman, he's a shortstop by trade, right? By drafting him, by his entire career, until you got Lindor, you had to move him out of shortstop. So all these years in playing shortstop, now you had to move him to third base, second base. But wait, we got Vientos, we got Beatty, we got Acuna. So we got to move these guys everywhere, right? So you play him out of position. He's got the best arm as a third baseman. So, and he doesn't have the best glove, by the way. He just doesn't. He's very indecisive at third base, which is understandable because he's a natural shortstop. He'd probably be a better second baseman than a third baseman. So this is part of the problem. And again, Mendoza feels obligated to make those decisions. And everybody can say, oh, Mendoza did a bad job. Again, who was he putting in the game other than Ronnie Stanek, just to go back to the bullpen situation? That's all I saw next. Oh, Ryan Stanek. Why'd you put Ryan Stanek in? Why'd you put Ryan Stanek in? Did Helsley do his job? No. He gave up a 2-run homer. So if he would have came in the situation where Stanek did, who was pitching the 8th? Somebody else? Right? Didn't matter. Hageman, we're already down by 3 runs, so Hageman was in the game. So Stanek was going to come into the ball game in some point in this game in the 7th or 8th. And most likely probably would have gave up something. So the opener, which started the game, where Reed Garrett probably would have pitched where Stanek pitched today, affected the game right off the bat. And to put on top of that, Montas couldn't get through a 5th inning, couldn't get to the 5th inning and pitch through it, and maybe pitch 4 innings, where you could have started using your bullpen in the 6th inning instead of the 5th inning. All trickles down to other problems. And then, the Lindor error earlier in the game to give the 2 runs in the 2nd inning, right? It was a high hopper, right? That ball had a tremendous topspin. You played infield, that ball can take a higher hop than you're expected, right? I don't care how good you are defensively, it happens. He's got to make that play, right? You saw what happened. He thought he was going to be here and then ended up over here. Shit happens, right? But Lindor's got to make that play, right? So the defensive purposes gave up 3 runs off the bat. So in total, what did we give up? 4 earned runs. So technically, if no errors, you would have gave up 4 runs. It would be tie game. We'll see what will happen. But this is the problem. And Dolo, I'm so glad Mendoza's mad. Because you know why? I don't think there was anything he can do in this game today. Guys didn't make plays. Guys couldn't pitch. And you gave up 3 leads in the game. What is Mendoza supposed to do? Seriously. Like, it's so frustrating to think this. It's so frustrating. Like, this is a game where Mendoza, I don't think did anything wrong. Nobody was against putting Mauricio in the game for defensive purposes. That made sense on the surface. But why did he make that decision? One, because these guys are on the bench who are top prospects, where you're putting in a guy who is not a third baseman, and you can play him at third base all you want. He's a natural shortstop, probably better at second base, right? So there you go. So on the surface, it sounds like a good idea. But if this was Vientos of last year, you're not taking him out of the game. Number one, you're not taking him out of the game. Why? because it's a close game, right? At the time, it was 4-3. It was 4-3. So, right, that was it 4. Yes, it was 4-3. It was 4-3. So you're not taking him out of the game. It's a close game. It's a one-run ball game. You might need Vientos bat later, in that part of the game. Where he's going to get another at bat. So that at bat might come to play. Why do you take out Vientos? Because he's not great. He's not doing great offensively, and he's obviously not a great third baseman. So if he's not a great third baseman, why are you starting him? Right? Why do it at all? Why not just play Mauricio? Oh, I'll tell you why. Because when you don't have guys that are doing their jobs, you feel obligated to make changes. This is why it's the problem. This is why it's a problem. Why? Some of these guys should have been gone. You should have got better players in here. And having the logjam in these situations are why it's a problem. And why the roster the roster construction is not good. And why it comes back to haunt us too many times. And it's so annoying. Like, nobody's good enough to play third base. So we constantly see different players rotating at third base. Nobody's stepping up, including Mauricio, to keep that job. And we talked about it in the pregame. If you want to make Mauricio third base, it seems like they played Mauricio at third base a lot more. So leave him there, right? DH Vientos, and that's it. But you see the inexperience from Ronnie Mauricio. This isn't the first time he made stupid decisions at third base. He plays a lot of balls to the side, which is typical of a player that is a shortstop. Why? Because it's a different angle at shortstop. You have more time to make your decision, where you can charge balls, you can play balls to the side. You're going left or right further at shortstop, in the hole, up the middle. At third base, the ball's coming to you. You got to make a split decision. You need a high IQ baseball player there. You need somebody who can make that decision quick. And who makes that decision quick? Natural third baseman. At least Vientos, for the last year or so, 2 years, have been playing a lot of third base in the minors and in the bigs, like last year. Stop taking guys out of position. That's why when people talk about Jet Williams and Luis Analacula, put them in center field. When you're not a natural player at that position, old habits die hard. Old habits are going to trickle in important moments. Indecision is going to take effect. That's why when I said you better get a center fielder, because I don't want to see McNeil out there because he's not a natural center fielder. Why? Because when the pressure gets going and big plays need to happen and big moments happen, you got to make a decision quick. You got to make it quick. You don't got time to think. You got time to think before the pitch. But when it happens like that, when the ball's hit, you got to make that decision. You got to make that split decision. That is why when you have guys out of position, and Mets fans should know this for years, with Daniel Murphy, Lucas Duda, on and on we go. We've seen it before. The indecisiveness, the bad throws, the bad defensive metrics, the way they do things. It doesn't look natural. It doesn't look natural. Mauricio looks uncomfortable at third base. He does too many things where playing balls to the sides. Just look at the games at third base. If the ball is not hit hard to him, he's playing the ball to the side. He did it in that when he made, it wasn't an error, but it should have been. They gave him a hit, but it was a two-hopper. Was it hit somewhat hard? Sure. But it's a situation where you got to put your body in front of that ball. The lead run is at third base. You got to make that play. The tying run is on third base. That ends the inning. You got to at least knock the ball down. Because the ball clearly looked like it bounced up a little higher than expected. That's why you put the body in front of the ball, especially at third base. You are a human shield at third base. I agree, Kev, 100%. But I don't think Beatty's a good third baseman. Like, that's the difference between a good third baseman and a natural third baseman that is actually a good defensive third baseman. You don't see good third basemen play balls to the side unless they absolutely have to. There's been, Beatty does it. Beatty olays balls at third base, right? When you're a good defensive third baseman, you play the ball in front of you almost 99% of the time. Unless, obviously, the ball is hit in a direction left or right where you have to backhand or play the ball to the side. But most of the time, if you have an opportunity to get to the front of the ball, you do it at third base. Yeah, I agree. Kev, yeah, Lindor has 11 errors this season, right? He hasn't been good, right? Plays like that where he should make it easily, he hasn't done it. Well, for whatever reason. But when David Stearns talks about run prevention, that's not working, is it? But I don't see how you talk about run prevention and then you put a natural shortstop at third base. And the other problem with Mauricio, and this is not all his fault, is that the Mets were playing him at second base. Then when Beatty and Vientos out of the field, they throw him at third base. And now he plays second and third. So you got to play differently in those positions. People think it's just easy to move from short to second and short to third. It's not that easy. And then when they throw you to second and third, and you're going back and forth here, there's a lot to think about. They can't just worry about one thing. And this is when I talk about baseball IQ. And when it comes to these top prospects, that are they as good as we think? I don't know. I mean, they don't get enough opportunities to do so. Why is that? Roster construction. You got 3 third basemen on this roster. Makes no sense. None of them hit. None of them are good enough defensively to warrant them playing third base. So there's your options. Why I said in the offseason you should have got Alex Bregman, to be quite honest with you. He would be a vacuum at third base. And I know he's not having a great season offensively, but it's better than everybody else that's playing. Right? What does he have? 15 home runs? 15 home runs? He played 71 games this year. So I'm not overly saying, oh my God, you got to give him the money and play him or pay him. But just think, Bregman has more home runs, more RBIs than everybody that's played third base this year. And it's doubled the number. So it's an upgrade. And then you wouldn't have to worry about the defense. You're not taking Bregman out for defensive purposes. You see the difference? I agree, Strike. Bregman was hurt. But even in 71 games, he has more home runs and more RBIs than Vientos and Beatty, who's played either just about the same amount of games or more. You see the problem? This is why I said that. Go back to my offseason shows. I said you should get Bregman. Why not? Because people brought up, oh, well, look what Vientos did last year. Well, he was never a good defensive player, Mark Vientos, right? He was positionless prior to Beatty failing. And the reason why he wasn't up, because he had no position. He was forced at third base, which is already a problem within itself. So this is why when we talk about prospects, they better be ready. Because you can't fuck around when you're trying to contend for a World Series and play around with these guys. Now, you give a lot of blame to Vientos, because if Vientos was doing what he's supposed to do, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He wouldn't have been taken out of the game for defensive purposes. Because he played solid, not great, but solid defense last year. You're not taking him out, especially in a close game when he could get another at-bat. And when you have too many options, when you continue to use multiple guys on an everyday basis, because the roster construction is idiotic and doesn't make sense, you fall into a situation where you give Mendoza options that he feels obligated to do so. Because we all know what would have happened. If Vientos would have made that error, somebody would have said he should have brought Mauricio in the game for defensive replacement. So you can't win. There is not a thing Mendoza could have done today in tonight's game to say it's his fault. Now, there'll be some people who are just tuning in, and thank you for tuning in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Why is Ryan Stanek in the game? Well, let's go back to the starting rotation. Because Montas can't get out of his own way. The Mets needed to do an opener. And if you go back for them during the season, a lot of the times they open, it was either Brazaban or Reed Garrett. So those two guys are the most comfortable opening games. So you're going to naturally go to those guys. So Brazaban's not here, so it's Reed Garrett. Why did Ryan Stanek start the 7th inning? Because Reed Garrett opened the game. That is the trickle-down effect that I always like to talk about. It's my favorite word, trickle-down effect. Words. Trickle-down effect. It is the problem. I agree, Strike. I said it to my father. I was like, Garrett should have went 2. There was no, again, but here's the problem. If Garrett goes 2 innings in a bullpen, and this goes back to the starters, when your starters don't give you length, Reed Garrett can now pitch tomorrow. That's why it's important. That's the thing you have to think about. We use 6 bullpen arms today, 4 yesterday, so 10 bullpen arms in 2 games. You're going into tomorrow, which is clearly a must-win, which it seems like it's a must-win every day now, but it's a must-win tomorrow. You're kind of, Rogers pitched twice, so he's probably not available. Stanek has pitched twice, but nobody wants to see him, but still. Soto pitched twice, so who do you have? You might have Helsley. I mean, who cares about Diaz? You can't get to the 9th inning with a lead anyway. So you might have Helsley. You'll have Reed Garrett. And who pitches tomorrow for the New York Mets? Right? We go back to the same thing. Let's go tomorrow, right? Who pitches for the New York Mets tomorrow? It is Sean Manaea, who is still trying to build up his pitch count and hope to give you 5 innings. So who's pitching these innings? You're going to get the bottom of the barrel. You might see Hageman tomorrow. So you got Reed Garrett, you got Diaz, and probably Helsley. But Diaz is no contest right now because he ain't pitching. He might pitch 2 innings, 8th and 9th. You got an off day Monday. He hasn't pitched in a few days. So maybe he's got to throw to 2 innings. But even that's risky. We know how that goes. We never know how a bullpen guy is going to do pitching 2 innings. Even though he's done it before, we don't know. It's very up in the air. So we're working with what? Reed Garrett, most likely, and Helsley being able to pitch. Now, maybe Rogers, who got a rubber arm, might be available in a situation if Manaea can't go more than 5 innings. If he goes 5 innings, we can probably survive, but who knows? That is the problem. When you go with a rotation like this and they consistently don't give you length, you got to come up with different ways to get through a game. That's not Mendoza's fault. That's Stearns with the roster construction, right? When you cheap out on the rotation and you think these guys are better than what they are, or you try to fix 3 guys in a rotation and make reclamation projects out of everybody, you're going to fall into many problems. And the Mets have done that. Again, and Strike, you know what? Bring up McLean and Sproat. We're going to have the same issues. We're going to talk about the same thing because these guys are on innings restrictions. They're probably between 130 and 145 with innings. If you haven't looked, both of these guys are over 100 innings. So what are they going to have? 3 starts to get to that point? Maybe 4? If these guys are only going to throw 4 innings, possibly 5, and that's if they're pitching well, you're still constantly using 4 to 5 bullpen arms a game. So all they're going to do is put up hopefully zeros, but again, that's if they pitch well. Like, that's the problem. Well, again, at Rock, I agree with you. These guys should have been up here in June when we needed help with the rotation, with the injuries. Now we desperately need it, but hey, guys, don't worry. We're going to have that extra year of control over these pitching prospects, because we care about 2029 and 2030. You see the problem? So it's not all about winning. And you know what? It's okay. Sustainability, guys, right? Stearns talks about sustained success, right? But that gets very stale when you make and again, because Met fans haven't seen 3 playoff appearances in a row in their history, it gets Mets fans goo gaga. Ooh, sustained success. Yeah, but sustained success is cute And once again, it looks good on paper. But let's say the Mets make the playoffs 5 years in a row. Ooh, right? That's going to get Met fans all good inside. It's going to make us feel good, right? But it gets stale quickly when you don't win the World Series. When you constantly lose in the playoffs, which the Brewers have when Stearns was running things, it gets stale quickly. Nobody's going to give a shit that you get in the playoffs every year. Yes, you got the opportunity to, but when you fail in the playoffs, something happens why you lost. And more often than not, it's where you kind of half-assed a part of the roster. And where did part of the roster get half-assed? The starting rotation. The starting rotation hurts the bullpen every single time if you don't got a good rotation. Everybody's like, oh, but when you got a good bullpen, when you get to the playoffs, you can shorten the game. But if you overuse your bullpen during 162 games, they're going to be shot. So the good bullpen means absolutely nothing. You need some length at some point in our goddamn season. And we fall for the same bullshit. Everybody was drinking the Kool-Aid with David Stearns, thinking that you don't have to give long-term deals to top starting pitchers. And then when you go to short-term deals, you pay your guys that are not as good cheaper, because guys that are not as good are going to cost you less. And then you have to hope they perform over what they're expected, or it's not going to work out. And case in point, there you go. This is what happens. And then when you got to give Senga a special type of rules, and you got guys coming back from injuries that you have to protect, and you have to make them build up their arm, which God forbid the rehab starts are for, right? It all falls in line, and it causes more problems. And somebody brought up somebody posted him hitting the 24th home run, Ryan Clifford, by the way, which is the guy that I really, really like, by the way, right? He was the main piece in the Verlander deal when Drew Gilbert and Clifford came back. The Mets weren't going to make that deal unless Clifford was in the deal. Gilbert wasn't the big piece. It was Clifford. Again, everybody talks about David Stearns and not like to give the long-term deal. He's not paying Pete Alonso. I'm telling you right now. So that home run record books for the Mets, throw it out the window. I can give a shit. I don't care. I don't care. I didn't get excited. You know why I got excited? Because the Mets were up 1-0. I didn't get excited about that. I don't care. Please don't care about that. I don't give a shit at all. The guy's not going to be on the team after this year. I tell you that right now. Ryan Clifford, who's a first baseman, by the way, right? He's young and cheap, right? For you prospect huggers, you should love this shit, right? So there you go. Enjoy. Yeah, I know that. I've said that for a while, right? Ryan Clifford's your guy. He's going to be your starting first baseman next year. If you don't believe that, then give me what you're smoking, because I want to be in an altered reality. Please. It's not happening. So, Mr. Met, Pete Alonso, that everybody seems to love, right? And, it took to the all these stupid negotiations and Steve Cohen to step in. And, oh, by the way, we're going to have a conversation about, Juan Solo in a second, because this is beautiful how Met fans quickly forget. All right. I don't think Pete Alonso is going to be your first baseman next year. Just for everybody to know that. Okay. So, you know how Met fans can't wait to call him Juan Solo. My dad does it. He loves saying it. He hates Juan Soto, by the way. Didn't like the signing. Whatever. Right? Whatever. Right? So, Juan Solo, right, hit a ton of solo home runs. Hit another one today. Right? 27 home runs. Leads the team, by the way. That shouldn't be happening, by the way. Just so everybody knows. He's on pace for 35 home runs. Maybe more. He's probably on pace for close to 40 home runs the way he's going. Only 13 home runs away, right? All the people, oh, he only hit solo home runs. What a joke. Even though Juan Soto isn't a home run hitter, right? He's an average guy, which I would take 6 home runs away from him if his average was 290. I would do that in a heartbeat. And everybody should do that in a heartbeat. And I'll explain why. Right? Mr. Pete Alonso last year. Or you Met fans, or you Pete Alonso lovers that could have always killed me throughout the entire year. And I talked about Pete Alonso when the majority of his home runs were solo home runs. Remember that conversation, guys? Remember that conversation? Oh, man, I love that conversation. That was a fun conversation every single show, right? Remember how you guys used to get on me? Oh, well, how many guys are going to hit 95 home runs, 90 RBIs and 31 home runs, right? The majority of his home runs were solo home runs last year, right? Nobody cared until it was the end of the season and Pete Alonso was not playing well and everybody started to figure it out, how much he padded his stats and hit a ton of solo home runs. And Met fans finally turned on him until he hit that home run in Milwaukee in the wild card series, right? Here we go. Pete Alonso did the exact same thing as what Juan Soto was doing this year. Exact same thing, except Soto's having a better OPS. He walked more, right? But besides the point, right? The same argument everybody's having and complaining about with Juan Soto is what Pete Alonso did last year. But people didn't say a goddamn word except for a certain few. So it's funny. It's funny how that works, right? Yet Juan Soto, who isn't a home run hitter, he's not a big power guy, leads the league in home runs. Now, I know it's not about like 4, 5, 6, right? Pete Alonso's right behind him. Pretty good chance that Pete Alonso is not going to lead the Mets in home runs. I'd take 6 home runs away from Juan Soto right now if he was batting 290. Honest to God. Why? Because Juan Soto gets the majority of his RBIs by hitting the ball in the ballpark, by getting doubles, getting singles, driving the ball to the gap. That's what he's done. Hasn't done it this year. And I think Yankee Stadium has a lot to do with it. He became basically a pull hitter. You see the ball he hit out of the ballpark today? Why do you think he got the barrel to that ball? Because he's pulling off everything. Did you see the 2 ground balls he hit to second base? Where were those pitches? Outside corner. You know where he usually does with those pitches? Drives it to left center. He's been over pulling on balls, and I think it takes a while to get out of your mind when you play the Yankee Stadium. I think that's a big deal. He had 41 home runs last year. He might be on pace for very close to that. I don't want that Juan Soto, right? So all the crazy people who love to talk about home runs and average doesn't matter, then why are you loving Juan Soto's season? You're the exact problem with baseball. His OPS, well over 800. Leading the league in home run, leading the Mets in home runs. He's on pace for what? Close to 40. Where's the people talking about Juan Soto and how great his years have been? Right? Nobody cares about average. He's batting 260. If that was not Juan Soto and people were looking at those numbers, people would be saying he's having a really good year. You see the problem with that? Because Juan Soto's not a home run hitter. Juan Soto is an OPS guy and a 285 hitter. If he has 20 home runs right now, but he has 15 more RBIs and batting 285, that's the Juan Soto you need on this team. Not the guy that leads in home runs. He's not a home run hitter. He's not a big power guy. And that's the problem with Juan Soto. And I think, again, that's why I think Yankee Stadium had a lot to do with it. He's become a complete pull hitter as a lefty, which is understandable. When you got a little league ballpark in right field and pop-ups go out, you're going to get 4 to 5, maybe even 6 more home runs, which technically he did on your average of home runs. Give me 30 home runs from Juan Soto, batting 285 and 90 RBIs. I take that all the time. This is the problem. Well, Dolo. Well, yeah. 2024 Juan Soto was awesome, but again, he's not doing anything different than he was last year. He's on pace for basically the same amount of home runs. His RBIs are going to be probably right where they are. from last year. The difference is the average. And again, when you hit 41 home runs, and again, he's striking out more, but he's pulling off on everything, man. Everything. So, no, I agree with you, Rock. But you know what? Brandon Nimmo's not worth $25 million. You know what I'm saying? So that is the problem with the overall concept of, let's talk about a player that did the exact same thing as your homegrown player last year, but we're not allowed to talk about it. But when Juan Soto does it, it's a story. Pete Alonso hit so many solo home runs last year out of his 31 home runs, but nobody cared. All people talked about, that's a solid year if his name wasn't Pete Alonso. He did the exact same thing. Steve Gels brought it up on the broadcast today. Did you hear him say that? They said Juan Soto's year this year is very similar to Pete Alonso's year last year. He goes, but nobody talks about it because he hit that one home run in Milwaukee in the wild card. That's why. So be consistent with your criticism of players. I don't care who they are. Let's not act like Pete Alonso's making $15 million here. He's a $30 million player. He has not been good since May. Again, back to Pete Alonso being good for 2 months and then being average for the remainder of the year. Typical Pete Alonso season. Typical Brandon Nimmo season. Has 2 hot months and average at best. So we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about a $30 million player, a $25 million player. And the $50 million player is hitting the home runs that everybody likes to talk about for baseball. His OPS is high. That's all everybody talks about. But now people cannot wait to talk about solo home runs. And now people bring up average. How convenient. How convenient. You're not consistent with your criticism. But when it's convenient, because Juan Soto is the punching bag right now, it's hilarious. But if you look at the numbers and not the name, people would think it's a great season. Nearly batting 260, 27 home runs, OPS well over 800. That's the typical baseball player. That is a great baseball player, according to most baseball critics, right? But because Juan Soto is a clutch player in his career, why his average should be 285 instead of 260, closer to 300, and his home run should be a little bit more down, people don't want to talk about it because average doesn't matter. The only thing people care about are home runs or OPS. That's all I hear, right? How many arguments did I have with Pete Alonso last year, or anybody that when they have a conversation, they can't wait to bring up OPS? Well, why don't you do it for Juan Soto? It doesn't count? Oh, because you expect a $50 million player to hit 50 home runs. When we all know, but because you don't want to talk about that, when Juan Soto is not a home run guy. He is a driver of the baseball. He's a driver, gap-to-gap type of hitter who's a 285 hitter, 30 to 32 home runs, 90 to 100 RBIs. That's the player he is. He is not the player that he should be right now. He's hitting too many home runs for my liking because most of his home runs have been pulled, has been to the right side. When Juan Soto is on, the majority of his home runs are scattered throughout the entire field. So overall, it should be a good season for the analytical people because that's all you talk about, home runs and OPS. That's Juan Soto. Congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted. All those solo home runs that Soto hits, why are you complaining about it? You didn't complain about Alonso last year's solo home runs. The majority of his home runs last year were solo. But you're not allowed to talk about Pete Alonso in a bad way. I know. I'm sorry. But I did all year. Everybody turned on him when the season was over. All of a sudden, when his September was terrible. And all the Mets fans started to turn on him. And it took one swing to change all the minds and now give contracts to Pete Alonso. The same concept with Juan Soto is it takes one swing in the playoff. Is funny. So be consistent with the criticism because it's a very similar year like Steve Gelbs, who was terrible as a play-by-play guy, but he's dead on. And you don't know how big my smile was when Steve Gelbs said that. He said it right in the beginning of the game when Soto was at bat, his first at bat. You know, it's very funny, Keith. Juan Soto's year this year is very similar to Pete Alonso's year. Oh, who said that? Who was talking about that? Me. Holy shit. And you know what? I'm not always right. And I know that. And I say some stupid and wrong things. I admit that every day of the week. But when your criticism is not consistent, and I've killed everybody. I was on Nimmo 2 years ago. I destroyed Nimmo 2 years ago. I killed Lindor. I've killed Pete Alonso, which I got destroyed for. And I criticize Juan Soto. He should be better, right? But too many people want home runs and OPS. Juan Soto got exactly what you want, but you're not happy. Why? Because deep down in your mind, you know he's not a home run hitter. He's a 280, 290 guy, a big OPS guy because of the walks, and he'll give you 30 home runs with 90 to 95 RBIs. That's why you're upset, and you should be upset because I want that Juan Soto. I don't want the guy that could hit 40 home runs with the Mets. Like, he's hit 3 home runs in 3 games. Like, there's a pretty good chance he can have 35 home runs by the end of August. That's what he's on pace for right now. And then in September, who knows? There's a possibility he can match the home runs that he had last year. The only difference is the average. So, yeah, well, easy. I know that. I've seen it. Right? They're criticizing Juan Soto for the exact same thing I criticized Pete Alonso with last year, and yet nobody did it until the end of the year last year. So be consistent with the criticism. That's all I ask. But when it doesn't matter, what matters now is that everything's not working for this team. All the Mendoza decisions last year that he touched, every move that he made turned to gold. This year, it's turned to cold. Turned to shit. He's not. The decisions that probably would have worked last year are not working this year. And you know what? That might be growing pains for Mendoza. He's a second-year manager. You know, people treat him like he's a 20th-year manager. And I don't think it's all his fault. I think David Stearns made him make decisions that I don't think he wants to make, to be quite honest with you. And I'm not saying that, you know, he's getting told from the top what to do. I'm saying the options, like all year, the bullpen never been the same because he constantly moves guys out, DFAs, sending guys down, sending guys up, back and forth, back and forth. There's no consistent bullpen. Now there is because there ain't a lot of guys with options. So David Stearns is, you know, it's fidgety in his seat because he can't make moves in the bullpen. So when it comes to, and David, I agree with that, striking out and pop it up. That's why I talk about average. But again, all these analytical people don't care about strikeouts and don't care about average. Yet, what do you want to do when you have people on base? You want to put the bat on the ball because shit happens. You see when the Brewers put the bat on the ball, shit happens. It was a ground ball to the third baseman. What happens? A possibility of an error. Even though they didn't call it an error, Mauricio botched the ball. What happens? You hit a chopper up the middle and Lindor misses it. When you put the bat on the ball, shit happens. When you strike out, nothing happens except an out. So overall, guys, it's a disaster. Now the Mets are 4.5 games out of the division. The Reds won today, so now they're only 2.5 up on the third wild card. We got Sean Manaea going. I can't tell you where you're going to get from him. He gave up a 5 spot last time. You know, he was supposed to build up his pitch count in that game, go deeper into a game. Couldn't do it because he threw too many pitches and he gave up a 5 spot. You can't leave him in a game for that. So what are we going to get from Sean Manaea? No idea. Here's what I know. They better win. Tomorrow's a must win. I know we've been saying that for the last week. Tomorrow's a must win. You can't get swept. Especially going into this off day, can't get swept. There needs to be urgency here. You got, again, right on your screen in big, bold number, 45 games to go. You're 4.5 out of the division. You're 2.5 up on the third wild card. Things can happen rather quickly, guys. You got to get it together. There's got to be urgency here. And I'm glad I saw frustration from Lindor. Thank God. I'm glad, as people said in the chat, Mendoza looked very angry today. Thank God. You know what? A lot of guys looked angry today. I'm happy with that. I'm glad. Come out tomorrow and be pissed off. Don't make those stupid mistakes. You play if you would have played a clean game today, you probably win 4-2. But because you didn't play a clean game, had multiple errors in big spots, you lose 7-4. That happens quickly. I agree, Izzy, and that's been the Mets' problem still. That has been Kodai Senga's problem. That has been Clay Holmes' problem. You know, they'll give you 5 strikeouts, but they'll give you 4 or 5 walks every time. So, with that said, guys, we had a major viewer party of over 220 on X and YouTube on this stream today. And again, negativity pays. When things are going bad, people like to watch, man, I tell you. Right? You know how many comments I got from coworkers who are Met fans and people commenting after my Mets Talk Live on Thursday on the off day where I was spilling a lot of positivity going into the Brewers series? I got comments saying, hey, I tuned in because I couldn't wait for your rant. I couldn't wait for you to go a little crazy. Like, I was trying to spill positivity as people asked me to do. And I tried to have a little positivity going into a Brewers series where it might have woken up a sleeping giant. Clearly didn't. The Brewers are poking the bear. It's just not happening. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. Negativity pays, man. I tell you. Like, post games average around 70 to 80 views on YouTube while I'm live. It's over 200. Like, it's insane. Like, people want to hear rants. And I apologize for the people that don't want to hear it. But, man, I tell you, they deserve every freaking bit of it, man. Every bit of it. The Mets are 63-54, 4.5 out of the division, 2.5 up on the third wild card, trying to avoid another sweep and trying not to lose 7 in a row going into their off day on Monday. With that said, guys, I'll see you tomorrow for a pregame, bright and early around 11:45, 12 o'clock, probably 12 o'clock. And then I'll be with you with a postgame as well, guys. So Mets lose 7-4. Bad play all around, bad defense, bad offense, bad pitching. And hopefully we get at least one of those tomorrow that actually do well. So thank you for tuning in to the Mets postgame show, guys, here on the channel and on X. I will see you tomorrow for a 12 o'clock pregame for Mets Brewers Game 3 of that series, and the Mets try to avoid a sweep. Have a good night, guys. Let's go, Mets. And I'll see you tomorrow, guys. Have a good night.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets